The hall was loud, filled with voices, laughter, and the sound of coins being counted. Dozens of aliens crowded the wide chamber, their glowing eyes fixed on the stage. The air smelled of dust, smoke, and greed. It was a place where living beings were sold like broken tools. At the center stood a wooden platform high enough so all could see. On it, two small alien girls were trembling. Their silver hair was messy, their clothes torn. They held each other tightly, afraid to let go. On the right, older sister tried to look brave, but her hands shook. The younger one hid her face against her sister's shoulder. The auctioneer, a tall alien with skin like stone, banged his staff on the floor. His voice echoed through the chamber. Next, two sisters, healthy, strong, still young, sold together, but only to the highest bidder. The crowd leaned forward. Some aliens grinned, others whispered. Many were already preparing their coins. In the back of the hall stood a human. His clothes were simple, worn out from hard work. His pockets were almost empty. He had come here, only by accident, but now his eyes were fixed on the stage. He saw the sisters holding each other. He saw their fear, and in that moment, something inside him tightened. He could not walk away. A loud voice broke his thoughts. It came from the front row. A massive alien with golden armor and sharp tusks stood up. His name was Korak, a warlord feared by many. He raised his hand and shouted, 50 credits. The crowd gasped. It was a strong opening bid. The auctioneer smiled with greedy delight. 50 credits. Do I hear more? The human's heart raced. He had only a small pouch of coins, barely enough to live for a week. Yet his hand rose, slow, trembling. His voice was not loud but clear. 55. The room went quiet for a second, then whispers filled the air. A human? Bidding against Korak? Has he lost his mind? He cannot win, he will be crushed. Korak turned, his tusks gleaming as he sneered. His deep voice rumbled with anger. You dare? The human's throat was dry, but he did not lower his hand. He kept his eyes on the sisters, not on the warlord. They were watching him now, hope flickering in their frightened eyes. The auctioneer clapped his hands. We have 55. Any higher? Korak slammed his fist against the table, making the wood crack. 70, he barked. The crowd cheered. Some laughed, already certain the human would give up. But the human's mind was burning. He counted the coins in his head. He thought of the hunger, the cold nights ahead if he lost everything. Still, he raised his hand again. 72, gasps filled the room. The human's voice was steady now, stronger. The auctioneer's eyes gleamed. He was enjoying the fight. 72 from the human. Will the great Korak answer? The warlord's face darkened. His tusks clicked together as he growled. His pride was wounded. No one had challenged him in years. The sisters clung to each other tighter, their eyes wide, fixed on the man in the back. For the first time, they looked less afraid. The auctioneer banged his staff again. 72, going once. Going twice. Korak rose to his full height, towering over everyone. His voice thundered. 80. The crowd erupted. Coins clattered. Aliens shouted. The human closed his eyes for a moment. His body felt heavy. He had so little left, yet his heart screamed at him. He could not stop. He would not let the sisters be torn apart. His hand rose again, slow but certain. His lips moved, and a single word came out. 83. The chamber froze. Silence spread like fire through dry grass. The auctioneer blinked. His staff paused in the air. Even he was shocked. The human's voice had been quiet, but in the silence it sounded like thunder. The sisters stared at him as if the world had changed. Korak's eyes glowed with fury. His claws gripped the edge of the table. He looked ready to tear the human apart, but the auctioneer only smiled wider. His voice rang out. 83. The bid stands at 83. Can anyone go higher? The hall was filled with whispers again. Some laughed at the human's courage. Others shook their heads. Everyone waited for Korak's next move. The warlord's chest rose and fell with rage. His tusks scraped together. He glared at the human as if promising death. The human stood still. His heart pounded. His legs felt weak, but he did not look away. He knew this was only the beginning. The auctioneer banged his staff. 83! Going once, going twice. The sound echoed in the hall. The sisters held each other tighter, their eyes wet with tears. The warlord growled deep in his throat. His claws tapped against the table. His pride battled his greed. The whole hall waited. Breathless, the staff hovered in the air. The decision was close, too close, and the human clenched his fists, ready to risk everything he had. The auction hall had turned into a battlefield, one of coins, pride, and the fate of two little sisters. The human sat frozen in the back of the auction hall. His heart was racing so fast it felt like it might break his chest. The sound of the auctioneer's voice still echoed. 83, going once, going twice. Every coin in his pocket suddenly felt heavy. He touched the small pouch at his belt. The leather was worn thin, and inside, only a few coins clinked together. It was all he had. It was meant for rent, for food, for survival. If he gave it up, there would be nothing left, but then his eyes returned to the stage. The two sisters were staring at him, their eyes wide, trembling. A small spark of hope was in their faces now. For them, he was not just a bidder, he was a chance. Maybe their only chance. The cruel warlord Korak leaned forward in his chair, his tusks glinting in the torchlight. His claws drummed the table. Slowly, he looked like a beast ready to strike. The crowd whispered, waiting for him to shout another number. The auctioneer looked at him too, eager, hungry for more credits. But Korak did not raise his hand yet. Instead, his glowing eyes stayed locked on the human, as if daring him to continue. The human's throat was dry. He swallowed. His pouch of coins felt lighter every second. He thought of nights he had gone hungry before. He thought of the long hours of work, the endless struggle just to survive on this alien world. He thought of how he had promised himself never to take risks again. But this was different. The older sister on stage whispered something, bending her head to the younger one. The little girl peeked out, her eyes wet with tears. For a brief second, the human felt their gaze pierce through the crowd and strike him like lightning. It was as if they were begging without words, please, don't stop. The auctioneer raised his staff higher. 83 going thrice. Korak slammed his claw against the table. The sound cracked like thunder. 90! He roared. His voice shook the hall. The crowd gasped. Some laughed, cruelly, already pointing at the human. He is finished, one alien said. No man can match that, said another. The human's chest tightened. He did not move at first. His mind screamed, 90? I can't. I don't have enough. His fingers dug into the pouch. He opened it slightly, peeking inside. The coins gleamed faintly, but there weren't many. He counted in his head. He could not reach 90, not even close. His hands trembled. Sweat ran down his temple, yet still, his heart pulled him toward the stage, toward the sisters. He remembered their eyes, the way they held each other. He remembered his own childhood, alone, hungry, forgotten. He knew what it meant to be powerless. He knew what it meant to have no one. His lips moved before his mind could stop them. His hand rose slowly. His voice was soft but strong. 92. The hall fell silent again. A single number, but it carried a weight heavier than iron. The crowd erupted in whispers, shock and disbelief. Korak's eyes widened, his claws froze. For a moment, even he could not believe it. A poor human had dared to push further. The sisters' eyes lit up. The younger one pressed her small hands against her sister's arm. Hope shone brighter on their faces. But inside, the human's chest was burning. He knew he was at the edge. He knew he had almost nothing left to offer. If Korak called higher, he would be finished. The auctioneer looked delighted. His grin stretched wide. He banged his staff again. 92! The human bids 92. Do I hear 95? The crowd leaned forward, waiting for Korak. Some were chanting his name. Others mocked the human, calling him foolish, brave, insane. Korak's tusks clicked together. His pride was screaming for him to crush the human. His reputation demanded it. But he stared at the human's face, calm, pale, determined. And for a brief second, Korak felt something strange, a flicker of doubt. The warlord finally growled, 95. His voice was lower now, colder. The human felt the weight crush him. His pouch was empty in his hand. He had no more. He had nothing left. His heart sank. His vision blurred. The sisters looked at him desperately, but he could not speak. He lowered his hand slowly, his breath shallow. The hall filled with mocking laughter. Aliens pointed. Some shouted, "See? The human was weak. He was foolish to try." "Now the warlord will take them." The auctioneer raised his staff again. 95. Going once. Going twice. The human's hand shook. His mind screamed, "No, not yet." Not while they're watching me like that. He reached into his pocket, searching again. His fingers found something small and rough. Not coins, but tokens. Small trade pieces he had saved from years ago. They were not much, but maybe, just maybe, the auctioneer would take them as worth. His hand shot up again. His voice broke through the laughter. 96. The hall froze for the third time. The crowd gasped so loud the walls seemed to shake. The auctioneer's grin widened even more. His staff banged the floor. 96. The human offers 96. Do I hear 100? The sisters stared at him now with tears streaming down their cheeks. Their hope was alive again, fragile but real. Korak rose to his full height, towering. His eyes burned with fury. His claws scraped the table. He was no longer calm. His pride was bleeding. The crowd went silent, waiting. The human's chest heaved. His pouch hung empty at his belt. His fate was sealed. If Korak called again, he would be broken. He had given everything, every coin, every scrap, just to keep two little sisters together. And yet he stood tall. His eyes never left the stage. He had nothing left to give except his courage. The auction hall had become a storm, and the human stood in the center, holding on with nothing but his will. The hall was no longer filled with laughter. It was filled with silence, heavy and dangerous. Every eye turned toward Korak, the warlord. His tusks gleamed under the dim lights. His chest rose and fell like a beast ready to kill. He had been humiliated. A poor human had stood against him not once, but many times. Korak was not used to being challenged. No alien, no human, no one in the sector dared to stand against him. And yet here was this frail man with empty pockets, still lifting his hand, still refusing to bow. The auctioneer looked uneasy now. His greedy smile faded when Korak slammed his fist onto the table. The wood cracked. Splinters flew. The sound echoed like thunder through the chamber. "Enough!" Korak roared. His voice shook the hall. The sisters on stage flinched, clinging even tighter to one another. The younger one buried her face in her sister's shoulder, trembling. Korak's glare turned toward the human. His golden armor glowed. Faintly, as if burning with his anger, his voice dropped to a dangerous growl. "You think you can steal from me, little insect? You think two worthless girls are worth your life?" The crowd backed away from the warlord's rage. Some laughed nervously. Others shook their heads, but no one spoke. Everyone knew Korak's temper. Many had seen him kill for far less. The human stood still at the back, his hands clenched at his sides. His heart beat like a drum, but he did not look away. He could feel Korak's fury burning into his skin like fire, but he kept his eyes steady. "I didn't steal," the human said quietly. His voice was soft, but it carried through the silence. "I bid." The words struck like a spark in dry grass. The crowd gasped. Murmurs rippled through the aliens. No one had ever spoken to Korak like that. The warlord's tusks clacked together. His claws tapped against the table, sharp and loud. "You dare mock me in front of all?" he snarled. His voice was shaking with fury. His pride demanded blood. The auctioneer raised his staff nervously. "Gentlemen, please, this is an auction. No fighting in the hall." But Korak ignored him. His rage was too great. He stood, towering over everyone, his shadow long and heavy. He pointed one clawed finger at the human. "When this auction ends, I will tear you apart piece by piece," the sisters whimpered. The older one tried to shield her sister with her thin arms. Their frightened eyes darted between Korak and the human. The human's throat was dry. He felt sweat on his forehead. He knew Korak meant his words. If the warlord wanted, he could crush him easily. But he forced himself to stand tall. He could not show fear. Not now. Not when the sisters were watching. "I didn't come here to fight you," the human said. His voice cracked slightly but grew firm. "I came here to keep them together." He nodded at the girls. "If you want to break me for that, then so be it." The hall exploded with whispers. Some aliens shook their heads in disbelief. Others smirked at the human's foolish bravery. A few, however, looked thoughtful, almost respectful. The auctioneer, sensing the danger, tried to take control again. He banged his staff hard. 96 to the human, do I hear 100? His eyes darted nervously between Korak and the man, hoping the warlord would calm down with another bid. But Korak's pride was bleeding too deep. He was no longer thinking of money, no longer thinking of the sisters. He only saw the human, weak in body but unbroken in spirit, standing against him before the eyes of all. "Do you think these people will protect you?" Korak snarled at him, his voice carried across the hall. "When you leave, you will have no coins, no food, no shelter. You will be alone. And when I come, no one will stop me." The human's jaw tightened. He did not answer. Words would not change anything now. The sisters watched, their small bodies trembling. The older sister whispered something to the younger one. Her lips were pale, but her eyes stayed fixed on the man who stood for them. It was as if she already knew his choice. Korak took a step forward. His heavy boots shook the wooden floor. The crowd parted quickly, giving him space like prey moving away from a predator. His anger filled the hall like smoke. The human's knees felt weak. His pouch was empty at his belt. He had nothing left to offer. Yet he still stood. Even with death promised, he could not walk away. The auctioneer, desperate now, shouted louder. 96 going once, 96 going twice. His voice trembled but forced its way through the noise. The staff lifted high. The final strike ready. Korak's eyes blazed with rage. His mouth opened, ready to shout 100, just to crush the human completely. But then, a strange sound came. The older sister on stage spoke. Her voice was soft, cracked with fear, but it carried through the silence. "Please, don't separate us. We'll serve. We'll work. Just don't take us apart." The words pierced the hall. Even the cruel crowd shifted uneasily. Some lowered their eyes. Others coughed awkwardly. For a second, even Korak's rage paused. The human's chest tightened. His eyes burned. He had nothing left to give but his courage, and so he took one last step forward, meeting Korak's burning glare without fear. "If you want me," he said, his voice steady now, "you'll have to face me outside, but inside this hall, the bid is mine." The auctioneer slammed his staff, desperate to end it before blood spilled. "Sold, 96, to the human." The crowd erupted, some in laughter, some in disbelief, some in admiration. The sisters' tears rolled down their faces, but now they smiled, fragile and trembling. Korak's claws dug into the wooden table until it splintered. His voice was a low growl, a promise of blood. "Enjoy your victory, human. It will be your last." The human stood still, his breath heavy. He had nothing left. But in that moment, he had won, and the warlord's rage promised that this was only the beginning. The auction hall shook with noise. Some aliens cheered, others laughed. Some shook their heads in disbelief. The staff had already struck the floor. The human's bid had won. But the fight was not truly over. The warlord Korak stood tall in the center, his golden armor gleaming under the dim lights, his tusks grinding together in fury, his eyes burning like fire. The crowd could feel his rage like a storm about to break. The human stood at the back of the hall, his pouch empty at his belt, his hands trembling. He had nothing left. He had already risked everything, his coins, his safety, even his life. Yet he did not move. He could not. The sisters on the stage still clung to each other, their hope tied only to him. The auctioneer cleared his throat nervously. He raised his staff again. The bid stands at 96. Going once, his voice echoed, but no one moved. All eyes were on Korak, waiting for his next move. The warlord's claws tapped the table slowly, sharp against the wood. The sound was like knives scraping bone. He leaned forward, his deep voice rolling through the hall. 100? The hall gasped. The number was heavy, final. The crowd erupted in whispers. No one can match that. It's over. The human has lost. The auctioneer's eyes lit up greedily. He banged his staff. 100! To the warlord, do I hear higher? The human froze. His chest tightened, his breath caught in his throat. 100. I can't. He had no more coins, not even scraps. He had given all he had. His body sagged with the weight of defeat. The sisters' faces blurred in his vision. The younger one sobbed quietly. The older one bit her lip until it bled. Their hope. Fading again, the crowd began to laugh, cruel and mocking. See? The human is finished. Foolish to challenge Korak. He will regret this. The human's fists clenched, his nails dug into his palms. He felt fire in his chest. His heart screamed at him, no, not yet. Not when they still need me. His eyes darted to his pouch, empty, then to his boots, worn and torn. He searched his body, his mind, desperate for something, anything. He found nothing of value left. But then his hand brushed against a small object hidden in his pocket. His fingers closed around it, a simple piece of metal, a token. It was not money. It was not wealth. It was a keepsake, the last memory of his father. His chest ached. He had carried it for years, never letting it go. It was all he had left of his family. But now, as he looked at the sisters on stage, he realized what he must do. He stepped forward. His voice cracked but carried strong. 101. The hall went silent again. Whispers spread like fire. Impossible. What did he offer? He has nothing left, the auctioneer frowned. Show proof, he demanded. The human lifted the small token. The metal gleamed faintly in the torchlight, worn but precious. This, he said, his voice steady. This is my last piece, my father's token. I offer it. The crowd erupted again. Some booed, some cheered. Many laughed nervously. No one had ever seen a human defy a warlord like this. No one had ever seen pride fall so low. Korak's face twisted with rage. His claws dug deep into the wood until it shattered. His voice was a growl, low and deadly. You may have bought them, but you bought your death with them. The human's chest rose and fell, his body weak, his hands empty, yet he stood taller than before. His eyes met the sisters, and in their gaze he found strength. He whispered to himself so quiet no one else heard. Stay together. That's all that matters. The hall trembled not with laughter but with the weight of what had just happened. A poor, struggling man had outbid a powerful warlord, not with wealth, but with heart. And though he had won, the storm outside the hall was waiting. This was not the end, it was only the beginning. The auctioneer's staff struck the ground with a sharp crack. His voice rang across the hall. Sold to the human. For a heartbeat, the hall was frozen. Then the crowd erupted. Some laughed, others jeered. A few shook their heads in disbelief. No one could believe what they had just witnessed. A poor, worn-out human had outbid the mighty warlord Korak. On the stage, the sisters broke down in tears. They clung to each other tightly, their small shoulders shaking. But in their tear-filled eyes, there was joy. For the first time that night, their hope was real. The human's knees felt weak. His pouch was empty, his hands trembled, his chest rose and fell heavily. He had nothing left, no coins, no food, not even the precious token he had carried for years. He had given it all away, but he had won. The sisters would not be separated. Bring them down, the auctioneer shouted, eager to clear the stage. 2 guards dragged the sisters off the platform, pushing them toward the human. They stumbled, but when they saw him, their small feet carried them faster. They rushed forward and wrapped their arms around his legs. The human bent down slowly, his hands gentle. He touched their shoulders softly as if afraid they might vanish. "You're safe now," he whispered, though his own voice shook. "You're together." The hall's cruel. Laughter still echoed, but it was drowned by the sound of Korak's claws tearing into the table. Splinters flew. The warlord's eyes glowed with hate. His pride had been broken in front of all, and for that he would not forgive. The auctioneer, greedy but cautious, leaned closer to the human. "Take them and leave quickly, before trouble finds you." His eyes darted nervously to Korak. "You've paid your price, but your enemy is not finished." The human nodded. He stood, taking the sister's hands in his. Their small fingers clung tightly, refusing to let go. He led them through the crowd, heads turning, whispers following every step. "He'll be dead before morning." One alien muttered, "Foolish courage." Another spat, but a few watched in silence, respect flickering in their eyes. They reached the door, the cold night air rushing in, but before they could step outside, a loud voice thundered behind them. "Stop!" The warlord's roar filled the hall. Korak stood tall, his golden armor gleaming, his tusks sharp, his claws dripping with splinters. "No one defies me and walks away," he growled. The crowd parted quickly, eager to see blood. The guards hesitated, but no one dared to block Korak's path. He was unstoppable when enraged. The human turned slowly, his body tense. The sisters pressed against his legs, trembling. Their small voices whispered, "Don't let him take us." The human's heart pounded. He had nothing to fight with, no weapons, no coins, only his will. But he stood firm, his eyes met Korak's, steady and unflinching. "You lost," the human said. His voice was calm, though his chest shook with fear. "The bid was mine. They are mine now." The hall gasped. No one had ever spoken to Korak like that before. The warlord's tusks clicked as he snarled. His claws scraped against the wall, leaving deep marks. "Then pay the rest of the price with your blood." He took a heavy step forward. The ground seemed to tremble. His shadow fell over the human and the sisters. The crowd roared, cheering. Some shouted for Korak to crush him. Others shouted for the human to run. But the human did not move. His hands tightened around the sisters' shoulders, pulling them behind him. He whispered softly so only they could hear, "Stay close to me." The first blow came like lightning. Korak's clawed hand slashed through the air. The human barely moved in time, the strike missing his face by inches. Wood shattered where the claw landed. The sisters screamed, clinging to each other. The human staggered back, his body weak, his arms trembling. He had no chance in a fight, but still he stood tall, his eyes locked on Korak. "This isn't about me," he said loudly, his voice echoing. "It's about them. You want me? Fine. But you will never take them apart." The crowd grew silent again. His words cut through the noise. Even those who mocked him before felt the weight of his stand. Korak's rage only grew, his tusks bared, his roar shaking the walls. He lunged again, this time faster. The human braced himself, but before the blow could land, several guards stepped between them. Their spears crossed, blocking the warlord. "Enough," the auctioneer shouted. His voice shook, but he forced it strong. "The auction is finished. Payment has been made. No blood inside my hall." For a moment, Korak's fury looked unstoppable. His claws pressed against the spears, bending them. His eyes burned with the promise of death, but then slowly he lowered his hands. His tusks gleamed as he smiled coldly. "Very well," he growled. His voice dropped low, so only the human could hear. "Leave. Take your sisters. But remember, there is no wall high enough, no street dark enough. I will find you." The human said nothing. His jaw tightened. His hands held the sisters closer, with the crowd still buzzing. He led them out of the hall into the cold night. His body ached, his heart raced. He had won, yes. But his victory was already marked with blood, for Korak's rage was not ended, only delayed, and somewhere deep inside. The human knew his struggle had just begun. The night outside the auction hall was cold and heavy. The streets were almost empty, only the flicker of strange lamps casting long shadows across stone walls. The human stepped carefully, the sisters holding onto his hands tightly. Their small fingers clung as if letting go would mean being lost forever. He had nothing left. No coins in his pouch, no token of his father, not even strength in his legs. Every step felt heavy. But he would not stop. Not while the sisters walked beside him. The younger girl stumbled, her feet bare and weak. The older one helped her, though her own body trembled with exhaustion. The human slowed his steps, bending down to lift the smaller one into his arms. She gasped softly, but then rested her head on his shoulder. Her silver hair brushed against his cheek. "You're safe now," he whispered again, though his voice was soft and tired. The older sister walked close to his side, her wide eyes fixed on him, as if she feared he might disappear if she looked away. They turned down a narrow street, away from the bright hall, but whispers still followed them. Some aliens had trailed behind, curious, whispering about the human who had challenged the warlord. Their eyes glowed in the dark, watching. The human ignored them. His focus was on the sisters. He found a small alcove beneath a broken roof and guided them there. The wind was strong, but it was shelter enough for the night. He set the younger girl down gently. She curled against her sister, who wrapped her thin arms around her. He crouched in front of them. His hands rested on his knees. His eyes scanned their faces, pale and frightened. "You're together now," he said quietly. "That's all that matters." The older sister blinked. Her lips parted. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked. "Finally," she whispered. Why would you give everything for us?" The human looked away for a moment. His chest ached. He thought of his past. Long nights of hunger, long days of silence. He thought of being small, forgotten, alone, with no one to reach out a hand. He sighed, his voice low. "Because once I was like you and no one came." The sisters were silent, their eyes filled with tears. The younger one crawled forward, her small hands gripping his arm. She leaned against him, resting her head there. The older one followed slowly, sitting beside him. For the first time, they were not trembling. The human let out a slow breath. He placed one arm around them both. Their warmth pressed against him, fragile but real. In that moment, something shifted. The weight of his sacrifice no longer felt like loss. It felt like the beginning of something new. Far behind them, the city stirred. Korak's rage spread like fire. The warlord's voice echoed through taverns and alleys. He swore vengeance. He swore to hunt the human down. His pride would not allow this insult to live. And yet, in the broken alcove, none of that mattered. The human's hand brushed gently across the sister's hair. He whispered, "I don't have much, but I'll find food. I'll find shelter. I'll keep you safe." The older sister looked at him, her eyes steady despite her fear. "We'll help," she said softly. "We're not weak. We'll stay together with you." The words struck his heart. He smiled faintly, tired but honest. "Then we'll survive." Together, the night grew colder. The wind howled through the empty streets, but inside that small alcove, warmth grew, not from fire but from bond. A bond forged not by blood but by choice, by sacrifice. The younger sister's breathing slowed as she drifted into sleep, her small hand still clutching the human's sleeve. The older one leaned her head against his shoulder, her eyes heavy but refusing to close. She wanted to guard him as he guarded them. The human stayed awake, his eyes scanning the shadows. He knew danger was coming. He knew Korak's wrath would not rest. But as he looked down at the sisters leaning against him, he felt strength. His past had been filled with loneliness. His future uncertain, but tonight he was no longer alone. The bond between them was fragile but unbreakable. The city could laugh, the warlord could rage, the world could turn against him, yet he would not let them go. He closed his eyes for a moment, whispering to himself, "Whatever comes, we'll face it together." The night carried on, long and restless, but inside that broken shelter, 3 lives were tied by a promise stronger than chains, and in the darkness of the city, eyes still, watched, waiting. Korak's shadow stretched longer with each passing hour, but the human's heart was steady. For he had found something worth more than coin, worth more than his own life, a family. The first light of dawn crept across the alien city. The lamps flickered out one by one, and the empty streets slowly filled with merchants and travelers. But in a broken alcove hidden between two crumbling walls, the human sat awake. Beside him, the sisters still slept, curled close to him for warmth. Their small breaths were soft, their faces calm at last. For the first time in many days, they were not trembling, not waiting for the next cruel hand to strike them. The human's eyes were heavy, but he did not sleep. His body ached, his stomach was empty, but his mind stayed sharp. He could still hear Korak's voice from the night before, the warlord's promise echoing in his head. I will find you. He knew it was not an empty threat. Korak was powerful, cruel, and proud. A man like him would never forgive humiliation, and the whole city had seen it. The story would spread like wildfire, how a poor human had outbid a warlord, how he had walked away with the sisters, how he had stood against rage with nothing but will. The human looked down at the girls. His heart ached. He had won them, yes, but what future could he give them? He had no home, no food, no protection, only himself, and against Korak. Would that be enough? The younger sister stirred, her small hand tightening on his sleeve. Her eyes blinked open slowly, soft silver glimmering in the morning light. She looked up at him sleepily and whispered, "You didn't leave." The word struck him deep. He smiled faintly, tired but honest. "I told you, I won't." The older sister woke soon after. Her eyes were sharper, her face more serious. She studied him carefully, as if trying to measure the weight of his promise. Then she nodded slowly. "If you stay with us, we'll stay with you." The human's chest warmed. Their bond was fragile, but strong, like a rope tied in the storm. It would not break easily, but even as hope flickered, shadows moved, far away, in a tall fortress overlooking the city. Korak raged. His armor clattered as he struck the walls. His roar shook the chamber. Guards stood trembling, none daring to speak. His pride was wounded, his power mocked, and the only way to heal it was with blood. "Find him," Korak growled, his voice like thunder. "Search every alley, every street. Tear this city apart if you must, but bring me the human, and bring me the girls." His command spread like fire. Already, hunters and spies were slipping into the streets, their eyes sharp, their steps quiet. Back in the alcove, the human felt the weight of unseen eyes. He stood slowly, stretching his sore legs. "We can't stay here," he said softly. "It's not safe." The sisters stood too, still weak but holding his hands. They trusted him, even in their fear. He led them through narrow streets, weaving through crowds of merchants setting up stalls. The smell of food made their stomachs growl, but they had nothing to offer. The human's heart twisted. He had promised to keep them safe, but promises would not fill their bellies. Yet even in the hunger, the bond between them grew. The older sister walked at his side, watching carefully. The younger clung to his arm, never letting go. Everywhere they went, whispers followed. Some pointed, some laughed, some shook their heads. But some bowed their heads slightly, as if in respect. The story of the human was already spreading, and in those whispers he was no longer just a poor stranger. He was the man who stood against a warlord. The human did not care for glory. He only cared for the sisters. Yet he could not ignore the feeling that something larger was beginning, that his choice had started more than just a fight for two lives. By nightfall, the city grew dangerous. Shadows stretched long, and the sound of armored boots echoed through the streets. Korak's hunters were moving, searching. The human and the sisters found shelter in an abandoned storehouse. Dust and broken crates surrounded them. The sisters huddled together. The human leaned against the wall, his eyes fixed on the door. He whispered to them, his voice steady. "I don't know what tomorrow brings, but I swear, no matter what comes, you will never be apart. As long as I breathe, I will keep you together." The sisters looked at him, their eyes wide, and for the first time they smiled without fear. But outside, in the deep shadows of the alley, figures moved. Hunters with glowing eyes and sharp weapons whispered to one another, "He cannot hide for long." The warlord's rage stretched across the city like a storm cloud, and though the human had won the auction, the real battle had only just begun. He did not know what tomorrow held, whether safety, hunger, or blood. But one truth burned bright inside him. He had chosen, and he would never turn back. The sisters were no longer just strangers from a stage. They were his family now, and even if the galaxy itself rose against him, he would fight, because sometimes the strongest chains were not made of iron but of love, and those chains would not break not even in the shadows of the future.